Welcome back, guys. In today's video, we're going to talk about character flaws. We're going to talk about what a character flaw is, why it's important, and how you can write a good character flaw for your protagonist to make your fictional novel even better. What's up, guys? Dave Jacobson here, best-selling author and book publisher. And in today's video, as I mentioned, we're going to talk all about character flaws. Now, if you're just joining us, this is a video in a series of videos where I'm teaching you step by step from start to finish how to draft a fictional novel. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, guys, or you just want to know more about character flaws, make sure you stick around at the end of the video and consider subscribing. I'm going to shrink my melon-sized head here, and we're going to get right into the heart of this video. So as you can see here, I pulled up this step-by-step story development process, right? So this is a process that I developed over the years in drafting my own novels, and I've been writing for decades now, and this is a process that works, guys. You can write a 85,000 word novel, draft one in just a matter of months if you use this process. Okay, it's going to give you an outline. It's going to give you everything you need to succeed with your novel. And so this video series is all about these steps. Now, the step we're going to focus on today is the step of creating a character flaw for your protagonist, okay? Before we get to that step, that's going to be the focus. We're going to talk all about character flaws. But before we get to that step, I'm just going to briefly recap what we've done so far in this series. Go back and check out the other videos if you haven't already done so you can get every step in detail. But really quickly, step one was to define a working title for our story, okay? Because if you get to the end and you don't have a good working title, then you're in trouble because the title is the most important text associated with your novel. It also will help you, if you do this first as the step number one, to narrow the focus of your creative energies. And there's infinite numbers of things you can think about and write about, which creates writer's block. And so by having a title, you necessarily narrow the focus, right? So the first thing that we did in step one was we came up with a title for our work in progress that we're working on together as an example in this series. And the title I came up with was Dead and Breakfast, right? I liked how it was a pun on bed and breakfast. I like that it grabs your attention and is intriguing and has a hook in it. There's a lot of reasons I liked it. Go back to video one if you want to know how to write a good title for your book. Okay. Step two, we loosely defined our protagonist and our antagonist. Okay. And go back to step two if you don't know how to do that, or if you don't even know what a protagonist or antagonist is. Make sure you watch that, because the most important thing you can do before you get to all the other steps is have an idea of who your protagonist and antagonist are. Okay. So we completed that together in video number 2 in this series, and I said that the protagonist would be this ghost girl who lives in a bed and breakfast along with her parents, and they haunt the bed and breakfast, and they run the dead side of the dead and breakfast, right, which is a building that's haunted, obviously, but there's living guests living in there as well. Okay, so go back and check that out if you want more details. That video. Step 3, we talked about basically just giving the protagonist a working name. We called her Callie. Step 4, we talked about giving our protagonist some likable and easy to relate to traits so we can, as a reader, sympathize with him or her. And we did that in this step. And we said Callie, our protagonist, would be courageous, loyal, humble, dedicated to helping her parents. Right? Step 5, we stated the conflict. Step 6, we defined the premise. Step 7, which was the most recent video that I just put out, we loosely defined the opening setting of our story, okay? And we said it's going to take place inside the dead and breakfast in this Greek village, modern day, right? So go back, and if you want more details on that. Now we're ready to move on to step 8, okay? So step 8 is the heart and the focus of this video, where we're talking about the protagonist's character flaw. Okay, so before we get into choosing a character flaw for our protagonist, I want to do a couple things. First, I want to talk about why this is important. Second, I want to talk about what a character flaw is. And then we're going to do some examples. We're going to look at Harry Potter and things like that. And then we're going to define we're going to do this together. We're going to define a character flaw for our protagonist, okay? By the way, we're writing this book together in real time, okay? So at the end of this series, I thought it'd be fun that I would maybe publish this book or, maybe share a copy or something. So you guys can see this all working and coming together, right? But for now, what we're doing is we're defining the character flaw for our protagonist, okay? So first of all, definition, what is a character flaw, okay? A character flaw in a story is a negative trait or imperfection that affects a character's behavior, decisions, or interactions with others, leading to conflict or challenges often, okay? So that's very important. In one of the videos, go back and watch all of them if you haven't already done so. I encourage you to do that. Prior to this one, I talked about the importance of conflict, right? Story is just basically like the reason people read stories. There's a number of reasons, but number one, they want to be entertained. They want to have some sort of emotional experience. And in order to do that, they have to relate to the protagonist. They have to care about the protagonist. And then they have to watch the protagonist get what they want. But it has to be hard for the protagonist to get what they want, or else it's not a story, right? If if the whole book was Harry Potter waved a wand and Voldemort was dead, okay, that's not a book, right? That it might be a story, but it's a very short story that's not going to hold your attention for very long. So what do you have to do to hold someone's attention? You have to make it hard for the protagonist to get what they want. So we have to give conflict and challenges to the protagonist. And one of the ways we do that is by giving the protagonist a character flaw, okay? So these flaws that we're going to give our protagonist have to somehow lead to conflict, and that's why. So these flaws can range from minor quirks to major personality defects and can significantly impact the character's journey and the narrative as a whole, okay? That goes back to what I was just saying, right? So we don't just want to give protagonist character flaws for no reason. We want to give them character flaws. We want to choose something that's going to make it harder for them to get what they want, okay? That's going to build conflict and tension to make your story more interesting and put readers on the edges of their seat. So character flaws are at their core negative traits or qualities that hinder a character's ability to succeed or function effectively. They influence how a character thinks, acts, and reacts to situations. Ideally, your selected flaws should make your characters more human and relatable as they mirror the imperfections found in real people, i.e. your readers. Okay, so this sentence is important too. Why do we want to make them more human and relatable? Well, that's because we want our readers to be able to relate to our protagonist. We want them to care about the protagonist, right? So if you give them your character a wound or a flaw that we can all easily relate to, or more importantly, that your specific target audience can relate to, then you're going to have a more successful book because people are going to be glued to their seats because they're going to care more about the character, right? So if you're writing a middle grade novel, for example, which is what we're doing in this book, I would highly encourage you to think about, okay, what are some flaws that teenagers typically have in common, right? Maybe it's they have braces, for example, right? Which makes them insecure. Or maybe they have difficulty finding a date to the dance because they have acne or whatever it is, okay? But think about making it relatable to your specific target audience, okay? Flaws often drive conflict and create opportunities for character growth and development as they strive to overcome their weaknesses. We'll talk more about that in a future video in depth. But for now, we're just going to move on and take a look at some of these common types of character flaws, okay? You can give your character dishonesty or greed or moral flaws, jealousy, pride, impulsiveness, right? That's one type of character flaw you can give your character. You can also give them personality flaws like arrogance or selfishness or cowardice or impatience. You can give them mental flaws, anxiety, paranoia, addiction. Think about how anxiety or paranoia can make it more difficult for your character to ultimately defeat an antagonist in the end, right? So it makes it more challenging for them, which makes it more of an interesting story. You can also give them physical flaws like tics, scars, or disabilities, right? In some stories about Arthur, for example, King Arthur, right? He has, he has a club foot or difficulty walking, right? So why? Well, number one, it makes it more difficult for him to defeat the antagonist. It also develops sympathy from the reader, okay? You can also give your character fatal flaws, tragic flaws that lead to a character's downfall, like hubris, excessive pride, etc. Okay, so those are some of the types of character flaws you can choose. Now let's look at an example. Okay, let's talk about Harry Potter. I use this example a lot because a lot of people have read this book, right? So you can relate and understand what I'm talking about. So in Harry Potter, so this is an example of like what you might try to draft in order to complete this step. Okay, so the whole point of the step is to choose a character flaw for your protagonist. So let's say we were writing Harry Potter. This might be what this particular step ends up looking like. In Harry Potter, the protagonist's main flaw is an underdeveloped sense of agency caused by years of neglect and powerlessness, right? He doesn't think he can be a wizard. He doesn't even really know how to make his own choices, right? He begins the story used to reacting rather than choosing. He also struggles with distrust of authority, naturally, because the Dursleys are terrible people, which is his early experience with authority, limited knowledge, impulsive bravery, and an intense hunger for belonging. Okay? These flaws, this is important, make it harder for Harry to defeat the antagonist because he must act inside a world he barely understands, right? He has limited knowledge. He doesn't know the world of wizardry yet. He must decide whom to trust. He has trust issues due to his parents, which makes it more difficult. And he has to learn that courage requires more than just reacting to danger. It requires choosing what kind of person he will become, okay? So that's an example of a good completed step if we were writing the book Harry Potter. We're not writing Harry Potter, unfortunately. We're writing Dead and Breakfast. So let's take this moment to try to create a character flaw for our protagonist in this story, which is Callie. Okay? So again, Callie is trying to... The premise of the story, which we already defined in a previous video and step, is Callie is this girl who is trying to help her parents successfully run a dead end breakfast, but the antagonist is the Department of Spectral Affairs, and they want to shut down Callie's parents' business for reasons we haven't gotten into or decided upon yet. We'll get into that when we work on the plot, but we know as part of the premise that if her parents' dead end breakfast is shut down, then her parents will be sent to Hades, which nobody wants, right? They want to stay in this living realm as long as they can, and if they're able to do that, then they don't have to go to Hades. Now they have to have a valid business license to stay there. They need to have a reason to stay there. The Department of Spectral Affairs manages that, and so they're trying to shut down the business. And so why don't we give Callie a character flaw that's going to make this all more complicated, right? So let's say that Callie is notably irresponsible, right? As many people her age are, right? So why is that important? Well, that's going to make middle grade readers be able to identify with her, right? Nobody wants to have to grow up and clean their room and do all this stuff, let alone have to clean some dead guy's bed sheets, right? So that's Callie's flaw, is that she's irresponsible and hates doing chores, which can possibly create issues when the Department of Spectral Affairs comes to do their audits, right? So we've just given her a character flaw, okay? And I've shown you how this can help create conflict in our story, right? Now you can give your character many character flaws, right? You can also say that she's inexperienced in the realm of the dead and in Hades, which she knows little about, okay? So all those things are, if she ever has to go to Hades, for example, later in the story to save her parents, she, not knowing about Hades and having little experience in the realm of the dead is going to create more conflict and tension and give our protagonist more obstacles and challenges. So hopefully that makes sense, guys. If you enjoyed this content or got value out of it, please comment, like, subscribe, and hit that alert bell so you can know the next time I put out the next step. Thanks for watching.